There we go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're just going to give people a few minutes to log in, and we'll get started probably at 6:05 or once we have some critical mass. Thanks. Okay, thanks for joining. We'll give people another minute or so to log on, and then we'll get started. Thanks, everyone. Okay, I guess we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining. My name's Liz Oper. I'm an urban designer with the Division of City Planning. I'm joined tonight with my colleague, Francisco Espinoza. And yeah, we're gonna go over some of the rezoning recommendations for Communipaw Avenue. I just want to give you a brief background of where we're at in this process. So we did a community meeting in December. And in the end of February, we released some draft language and shared that for review. So this is our second meeting. So thanks for joining us tonight. And there'll be, we'll go through the proposed draft zoning with you, but then we also will extend some additional time for a comment period. So we'll have a comment period through April 1st. So feel free to, if you can go to the next slide, please. You can shoot either Francisco or I an email with any questions or comments that you have. Our emails are listed on the bottom right, and then I'll also will follow up with an email following this meeting, so you have your point of contact. There's also a link here with to the draft zoning, so you can review the language there. So we want to look specifically at this portion of Communipaw between Mallory Avenue and Bergen Avenue. We'll dig in a little deeper, but just to get you oriented and started with the area that we'll be talking about today. So for today's meeting, we are going to start with, well, okay, let me just also preface with this meeting's being recorded. We will post this meeting on our website along with the slides from this presentation. So you'll have access to these while you're reviewing the draft language if something specific you'd like to look back at. So then from there, today's meeting, we're going to quickly go over some of the master plan recommendations for this area. We'll address what the current zoning is, explore and kind of visit some of the existing conditions through some photographs, talk about the history of the zoning a bit, what we are recommending, and go over some recent approvals in this area. And then at our meeting in December, there were a lot of transportation questions. So we just want to follow up with you on some of that discussion that we had last time. And then we'll open the floor for kind of an informal discussion and Q&A. We'll see how many of us there are left on at the meeting at that point. And if it's a small group, we'll just ask all of you to become panelists and we can have a conversation together, or we'll get into use the raise hand function, but we'll see where we're at towards the end of the meeting, how many people are on. Yep, so that's the format for tonight. So the master plan, for some background, our JC master plan was adopted in early 2022. There were about 160 recommendations to zoning maps, text, and policies. All of that can be seen in Chapter 5 of the land use element. City planning is studying these recommendations and bringing them to the planning board in groups or phases. So phase 1 was focused on corrective zoning and was adopted in September 2022. You might have heard of some new zones called the RC districts, residential commercial districts. And that was in response to what currently exists on the ground today. So corrective zoning is adjusting the zoning to match what is there. So that was that effort of phase 1. And then phase 2, we're focusing on recommendations to the R1 zone. So you might have seen some presentations or been at some meetings with our colleagues, Tanya Marione and Matt Ward. They're shepherding that effort. And Francisco and I are looking at this portion of Communipaw Avenue, which is a low-rise residential zone. Thanks. So previously with the master plan, a lot of the elements were kept as separate. They were very siloed in the way that they were thought of, and they weren't really framed in this way where we were making sure that we were taking all the info from all the elements and synthesizing them. So that's what we made sure to do in our effort with the 2022 update. So really everything is kind of tied together with this understanding of economic opportunity, connectivity and mobility, social equity, and climate resilience. You can go to the next one. Yeah, so again, just kind of stating the fact that all of these policies are intertwined, and that's really what shaped the recommendations of the land use element. Okay, I'll pass it over to you, Francisco.
Okay, so we'll talk about what is currently existing on Communipaw Ave. So Communipaw Ave between 440 and Bergen Ave, it is zoned as commercial automotive. And I'll talk a little bit more about the uses in a few. But for the purpose of this meeting, we recommended rezoning between on Communipaw between Mallory Ave and Bergen Ave. The western portion from 440 to Mallory Ave are better suited for redevelopment. So we are not discussing this and we have not touched this. Some of the reasons are because there is a majority of landowner in this area. A comprehensive vision needs to be in this area. There are a lot of through lots and the lot depths are less than 100. So specifically what is zoned today is commercial automotive zoning, and it's been zoned this since 2000. Some of the permitted uses in this area are retail sales of goods and services, auto sales, auto repair and services, service stations, auto body shops, financial institutions. There are some restaurants, all categories, and offices. Some of the accessory uses are also offices, fences and walls, signs, parking, car washes of all categories. And there are some of the bulk zoning information or bulk regulations. On the right, commercial automotive, the max front yard setback is about 5 feet. The minimum rear yard is also 5 feet. The maximum height of a building can go up to 30 feet, and the maximum building and lot coverage is 90%. There are also some zoning regulations regarding garage-based standards. And then these are some photos of some of the existing conditions which we took during our field study in, I believe, late December. So some of these photos are looking, I believe, east of Communipaw. Some of them are east, some of them are west. I believe. Oh, okay, that's it. So the next slide is a little bit more about the uses and the evolution of the zoning in this area. We did speak about this in our previous meeting, but just to give you guys some more information. So in 1963, this area was zoned for Business District B. What this permitted was retail businesses of any kind, apartment houses, and limited commercials. It prohibited any manufacturing, light industrial, gas filling stations, and any public garages. In 1974, the zoning regulations changed again and allowed for C2 office retail. What this permitted was office, retail, again, garden and mid-rise apartments were allowed. Auto service stations were permitted, auto sales, parking garages, and parking lots as well. Fast forwarding to what the zone is currently today, it is commercial automotive. So what we see today is retail sales of goods and services, a lot of auto sales, auto repair and services, service stations, auto body shops, financial institutions. There are some restaurants category 3, but all categories are permitted, and some offices.
Francisco, can you actually go back to some of the existing conditions photos?
I thought there were more, but
Yeah, so we can use this one. Yeah, that is weird. I guess we somehow lost a slide. But yeah, we basically just wanted to show you all that there's a lot of variety of uses on the site in this area. There's a lot of, there's a handful of multi-story, multi-family apartment buildings. There are some drive-through restaurants, and then a lot of these auto body uses. You can kind of see it in the image on the top right, where there are these like obstructions that the auto body facility is causing on the sidewalk. So that's just something that we're mindful of. You could also see the bus in the bottom right image is half mounted on the sidewalk. So there's definitely some room for improvement in the streetscape and making Communipaw safer for pedestrians. Thanks, Francisco.
yeah, no problem.
So we just want to kind of get a sense of who's in our audience today. So I'm going to put a couple of poll questions up. So we'll just start with this first one. Do you live within a 5-minute walk of this portion of Communipaw Avenue? I'll also take a quick opportunity to thank Councilwoman Franzeri's office for helping us promote the meeting. Sorry, I neglected to say this earlier. I know she was unable to make tonight's meeting, but if anyone from her office is on and would like to say anything, you could use the raise hand feature, or we can pull you up at the end of the meeting. Just let us know. We also have a chat bot, Q&A chat available. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. if you want to ask any questions during the presentation, but we do intend to open the floor for discussion later on. So let's see. Okay, I think that's probably what we're going to get for response. So I will hit end poll, but it looks like we are, so out of the, about a third of you live within a 5-minute walk of the corridor. So I don't know if you're able to see that on your end, Francisco. Can you see the, okay, great. And then I want to get a sense of people's interaction with this portion of Communipaw. So we're just going to launch this next question. And you're only able to pick one, but we want you to kind of show us how you identify as how you what best describes how you interact with Communipaw. So we'll just launch that poll, and if you can take a look at that. Okay. So it looks like the majority of people are responding with that they either drive through the area or that they live in the neighborhood. I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results. Share results. So Francisco, are you able to see that on your end?
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like in terms of residents who live on this particular strip of Communipaw, no one at this meeting is living directly on this portion of Communipaw. A lot of people are circulating through the area or they live nearby. And then we have a handful of people who also work here. Okay. All right, so we can keep going. Thank you for doing that. It's just helpful to get a sense of who we're talking to. Thanks. So what's recommended for this area? Oh, and I'm seeing someone in the chat said all of the above, so thank you. Okay, so areas to consider for rezoning. So we're recommending rezoning Communipaw Avenue between Mallory and Bergen. Just to note that this area is currently zoned commercial automotive. Any lots that would be developing housing of greater than 15 units would be subject to Chapter 187, which is our inclusionary zoning ordinance requiring affordable housing. So this is essentially in this rezoning where we are essentially upzoning these lots, but in that process that would open opportunities for affordable housing and require them. So from the master plan recommendations, specifically looking at this section of the corridor, in orange is a portion that the master plan team recommended for neighborhood commercial. That's a zone that you'll see in a few different areas of the city. For example, West Side Avenue, the Junction. These are like your walkable, commercial oriented, pedestrian friendly areas to support local business and kind of, build some critical mass in terms of residents in order to support those businesses. So it should be a model that you're a little bit familiar with and have seen in other parts of the city with the maximum height of 5 stories. And then for the portion between Mallory and West Side Avenue, it's highlighted in the purple shade here. The master plan team recommended considering that for a new gateway commercial zone. So you're going to hear us talk about it as a gateway commercial zone or as NC2, neighborhood commercial 2. But the goals of the master plan for this particular area were to improve the pedestrian realm, lessen nuisance impacts, reduce drive-in commercial activities in favor of uses oriented towards the street, and kind of maxing out at 6 stories. What's important is that the name gateway. So This is a major entry point to the city for people coming from 440 and 1 and 9. So it's some people's first couple blocks coming into Jersey City. So we think it could be a great opportunity to make some changes to and also make the space safer and to advance with the future. Thanks. Maybe go back one.
Oh, yeah, I just, okay.
Thanks. So for NC1, which is the NC neighborhood commercial zone we were just discussing, we're recommending that between West Side and Bergen. Many uses are permitted and it's very pedestrian oriented with a maximum height of 5 stories. The current NC zone, so NC1 and NC are the same. So some examples, the junction, portions of West Side, McGinley Square,
Central Ave.
Central Ave. So the zoning permits the zoning permits a 0 foot front yard and 0 foot side yards, 15 foot rear yards. And parking is really, the goal of it is to limit curb cuts, 0.2 spaces per bedroom. Yeah. And then NC2 to West Side, this is the new zone that we're proposing. And as we stated, this is a gateway, so it really should be something that's different and welcoming way into our city. So we're looking at a maximum height of 6 stories, some additional uses to be permitted, like hotel, business incubator uses. That was something that was recommended in our December meeting, and category 3 restaurants. So category 3 restaurant is a drive-through restaurant. So as an example, there's the McDonald's on Mallory and Communipaw. And then, so we'll also look to increase or set some requirements for minimum sidewalk widths. This will definitely help pedestrians circulate along Communipaw. So we're looking to create a minimum sidewalk width of 15 feet. This would definitely be adequate to allow for street trees, which there currently are none or very few. And then we're also looking to incorporate kind of this front yard green buffer as well, and that would be along the building edge. Francisco will describe a little further the parking by use. It's a bit more specific than it is in the NC zone. And then we're looking at a rear yard with a 25% lot depth.
Okay, so some of the bulk standard differences between the NC1 and NC2. The NC1 is pretty much the same as what currently exists in the NC. So the maximum building height is 5 stories and 64 feet for buildings without residential apartments above the ground floor. It also is 5 stories and 55 feet for buildings with residential apartments above the ground floor. The front yard and minimum side yard is 0. The minimum rear yard in the NC1 and NC is 15 feet. And some of the major differences between the NC1 and the NC2 you can see on the right. The maximum building height in the NC2 would be 6 stories and 64 feet high. Front yard setback, we would require the sidewalk width of 15 feet, as well as a green buffer planting area with a minimum width of 3 feet. So this is basically between the building facade and the 15-foot wide sidewalk. A little bit more detail about what this green buffer is. Basically, the green buffer is incorporated as a knee wall to protect the planting area and integrated basically with irrigation systems. So runoff water is required to permeate into the ground below it. It also requires pedestrian scale lighting incorporated into the green buffer. And for those who are interested in learning more about it, you can refer to the draft plan and see design standards for recommended landscape materials and treatments. The minimum side yard on lots less than 50 feet wide is none, except where there are existing windows. In that instance, the building must be set back a minimum of 3 feet. On lots 50 feet wide or more, parking garage levels may be built to the sideline, and residential or upper floors shall provide a minimum of 5 feet on each side. In regards to the minimum rear yard, parking garages on the ground floor may have a 0-foot setback. However, all other floors shall have a minimum rear yard equal to 25% of the lot depth. And then this is a little bit more about parking standards. So NC1 will be replicating the same parking standards as the current NC zone. So lots 5,000 or less, residential uses shall provide a minimum of 0.2 space per bedroom. And yes, this also includes studios. So studios will be counted as a bedroom. For non-residential uses, when the ground floor area of non-residential uses is greater than 5,000 square feet, we are requiring 1 space per 1,000 square feet. And then lots less than 5,000 square feet, off-street parking is not required. In the NC2, again, this is from Mallory to West Side, the minimum parking category 3 restaurant. So this is specific to the category 3 restaurants. It would be 1 space per 300 square feet. And then minimum parking for all other uses. And it breaks it down between residential, hotel, and I'll go through this. So residential uses shall provide a minimum of 0.2 space per bedroom. This is similar to what we saw in NC and NC1. However, the introduction of the hotels is new. So this is 1 space per 8 rooms for all non-residential or non-hotel room uses. When the gross floor area is greater than 5,000 square feet, 1 space per 1,000 square feet is required. And lastly, no parking permitted between the front building line and street line. Okay, and then what has recently been approved here? So we spoke about this, I believe, in December. So this is a rendering of what has been approved recently. So you can see, starting on the right, this building right here, 869 Communipaw, it was approved 6 stories and 70 units. Now moving towards the middle, 859 Communipaw, also 6 stories and 90 units. And lastly, the one that does not have a rendering, it is 846 through 849 Communipaw. This is also 6 stories and 35 units. So there is a pattern that they're all 6 stories, and this is sort of the same thing we're going with in NC2.
Great, thanks, Francisco. So we just wanted to follow up on a few things that are not directly related to zoning, but obviously impact the public realm and the space that we're talking about at Communipaw. So we had heard, and we just wanted to follow up with a little bit more information about these near-term improvements coming to Communipaw Avenue. So Jersey City won a local safety grant funded by the NJTPA for Communipaw from Marcy Avenue to Park Street, and that is covering the entirety of the area that we're discussing tonight and beyond in either direction. The scope of work includes pedestrian safety improvements. Really, the whole goal of this grant is to create a safer pedestrian realm and make things safer for the pedestrian. There will also be traffic signal updates, high visibility crosswalks. There's proposed additional crosswalks at Nunda and Belvedere Avenue, which would be closer to the park. So that would be convenient for a lot of people looking to make crossings in that area. Some resurfacing at intersections, and then replacements of deteriorated sidewalks and crosswalks. So again, just making walking in the area much safer and desirable option. And then from a timing perspective, construction is anticipated in spring 2024. Yep. And then for the long-term vision for Communipaw Avenue, envisioned in the city's bike master plan, which was adopted in 2019, we're looking at a road diet for Communipaw Avenue. What that means is a reduction in travel lanes to incorporate more infrastructure for cyclists, pedestrians, and public transportation. So you can see in these two plan diagrams on the right that Communipaw currently is 2 lanes in each direction. And the proposal would be to have 1 travel lane in each direction with occasional turn lanes, protected bike lanes on either side, bus island access. So I think there's one on Newark Avenue, but basically a place where pedestrians can cross the bike lane, the protected bike lane, get onto a bus island, and that's where they would mount and board the bus. And then also obviously some bike infrastructure like this bike box at the intersection. So this is something that's a long-term vision. I don't have a date on when this is proposed to happen, but this is something that the city has adopted in their bike master plan and is something that is kind of on our radar in long-term thinking, with the goal of ultimately having a road diet on Communipaw Avenue. Go to the next one. Yeah, so I'll open up another poll after I walk through some of the differences here. So basically, there was an approval at 859, 869 Communipaw Avenue, the projects that Francisco was just showing you the renderings of. You can see this area circled in orange here. That's a drop-off area that was incorporated into this project. So this is an area that comes into the sidewalk. Basically, the sidewalk would bend around it, but it's essentially like a small shoulder drop-off area for cars and delivery and loading. There's still a continuous sidewalk. It's just walking around this bump in, I guess I'll call it. So I do just want to also emphasize that in doing something like that, you can see on the diagrams in the left that might cause interferences with protected bike lanes. So that's just something we wanted people to have a big picture of in terms of weighing loading or drop-off zones and protected bike lanes. So we just I'm going to put a poll out and see how it does. If you want some more information about this, we can talk about it further, but I just want to get a sense of what people are thinking for this, because it was expressed as a concern to us at previous meeting. How would loading be handled? Loading and drop-offs, understanding the change in use to residential would be different from the existing commercial automotive use. Yeah, give it another couple of seconds. Okay, so I will hit end poll. About half of people are unsure, and then 6 people responded yes, and 1 person responded no. So I'll post that and see if you all can see that. So yeah, it's just something that we wanted to put out there in response to some of the concerns and see if it makes sense to try to incorporate it into the updated zoning. So thanks for your participation in that. Okay. All right, Francisco, we can move on. Okay. And yeah, thank you everybody. So we've, the materials were posted for review at the end of February. The review draft can be found at tinyurl.com/NC rezoning draft. There's a comment period through April 1st. You can email either myself or Francisco with some comments. Our emails are there. And there's a QR code for some more info. So we have plenty of time for conversation. If you do want to speak, you can use the raise hand feature and we'll get you on there. I saw a couple of questions come in through the Q&A as well. So I can start with one with some of those questions. And then it looks like Jake. So Jake has his hand raised. So I will. Yeah, so there's a couple of questions. Can you show some photos of the current conditions? If you can move to that slide. And then, and maybe we'll also try to pull up the slide that for some reason disappeared. And then, so I'm seeing a question from Emmanuel. Is it possible to add bike lane on Communipaw to connect Lincoln Park and Liberty State Park? I think that's identified in the bike master plan. We could share a link to that if you're interested. I think that's a great idea. With regard to the loading zones, would this be for rideshare and individual motorists? It would be for ride shares. For individual motorists, the intent is for if you were to, be picking up someone from your family or a friend or, quickly dropping off something. Definitely, it's not intended to be parking. It's intended to be a quick drop off.
I'm going to share my screen so I can show you guys the existing photo. I found it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think this happened to us last time too. I don't know. Something weird with the way that's set. So we have 2 slides of existing conditions and we can just put those up for people to take a look at. So I'm gonna, Jake, I see your hands up. So I'll, let's put people as panelists so that they can let us know if they can put their camera and mics on if they want to show their face, or we can just let you talk. So let's see if that works.
Where'd it go? There it goes. So
hey, Jake.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
So this is the photo we were looking for earlier.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, and if you can go to some of the other ones. Sorry about that. Hi, Jake.
There we go. Do you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Thanks.
All right. Perfect. So I had a few questions in regards to, well, some of the questions were answered on some of the improvements on the grants that got approved for next year on improving the streetscape and improvements along the entranceway coming into Communipaw from 1 to 9, which is great. And just so you know, I don't know if you remember, we were on the meeting a few days ago with the West Shot Special Improvement District. So that area is also within our corridor of improvements. So this is great things to see. The one concern I did have was with the pickup and drop off area. As we all know, crossing Communipaw, you can almost take your life in your hands to a degree. But at the same time, it is an essential vein where a lot of trucking and deliveries and so on and so forth come in. So I'm just concerned with the pickup and drop off area 1 and 2, kind of like what happened on Montgomery, where a lane was, the two-way traffic was reduced to 1 lane each way and you have a bike lane to accommodate it, which over there works out great because the traffic is not as heavy as it would be on that section of Communipaw. I think, keeping that roadway as open as possible without having a lot of in and out of traffic interfering. The entranceways coming from West Side to 440 and so on and so forth, just for the simple fact that, we already have issues on West Side Avenue because of Communipaw being bottlenecked as it is. And, and it backs up all the way down to Claremont from the light rail. It's almost like trying to get into the Lincoln Tunnel from, New York, if you've ever been stuck on that helix, during rush hour. So food for thought, and same thing with the pickup and drop off area, again, if you got 160 units going on there, I would imagine that area would be very busy with pickup and drop offs. I don't know, maybe instead of having a pickup and drop off area, they should just go. Do they have parking in the rear of the building I saw on the plans there?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their ground floor is all parking, so they'll be able to enter the parking from Communipaw.
Yeah, because my concern would be is I would rather have them go into the rear of the building to loop around anyway, and you have more of a staging area for cars to 160 units, and everybody, let's say nobody uses the parking lot at all, and it's all Ubers, Lyfts, mass transit. I can imagine you're going to have more than 4 cars at any given time during peak hours of rush hour in the morning coming in and coming out while you have, causing traffic. And let's just say if it's reduced down to 1 lane, forget it. They'll be the cause of the traffic in addition to everything else. I love the fact that we're going to get rid of, well, I wouldn't say get rid of, but as time goes by, it won't be as so much of an automotive area, because that's one of the other reasons why Communipaw between West Side and Kennedy Boulevard is so bottlenecked, because, it's really a 2-lane road that's reduced down to 1 because all the cars parked on the side. So food for thought. I mean, changing everything to walkable, nice commercial, new sidewalks would definitely reduce the amount of traffic. But it would help the problem that we currently have now, but I wouldn't make it worse by reducing it down to 1 lane with a bike lane. And it's dangerous. I mean, I have a store literally right there on the corner of Communipaw on West Side, next to Radani and Rashad Furniture Store by the BP there. Yeah, so we watch it all the time, and it's it's an interesting intersection, to say the least. So
yeah, it seems like we were trying to look at some of the bus stops over there, particularly the one heading eastbound off of Communipaw, and it just looks like cars are always parked in the bus stop, so then everybody has to stop behind the bus rather than just letting the bus pull into line as well.
Right. So you get a combination of that. I mean, also the lack of parking infrastructure as more residences become more prominent in this section. Maybe a backup plan for a municipal lot, for some of these businesses. I don't know if there's something in the plan for that. I don't know if you're familiar with the 2 municipal lots that we have on West Side, the one on Union Street almost, and the one by Duncan Avenue for West Side Avenue. So, if this amount of volume of people, which is awesome, are, promoted to go into the area, I think food for thought, and a planning side effect is to make as a line of redundancy, to maybe incorporate some sort of municipal lot or make some of the developments that become available, giving some of the spaces for, their local businesses and stuff like that, or whatever. If it's a mixed use property, it's business and retail downstairs, they should, maybe incorporate some of the parking that they have for their tenants as also parking for their the businesses that are renting from them as well. I'm just thinking of ways not to have, because if you have businesses on Communipaw too, chances are, just like West Side, they double park. So we might have the same problem that we have now where the automotive section is.
Yep.
So, that's my food for thought.
Yeah. Thank you.
No,
Much
of course. Thank you
appreciated.
so much. Thank you for hearing me out.
Yeah.
I did see Charlene's hand raised. Oh, I'm going to promote her.
Okay, great.
Hi, Charlene. You're on mute.
Am I on now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we could hear you and see you.
Okay. Thank you. And speaking to Jake's point, and I was in that meeting when you presented 2 weeks ago. And I'm all for a road diet for Communipaw Avenue, but with all of the residential, as you experience on any block that has a lot of residential units, I live on Duncan Avenue that has all apartment buildings, and you will always get double parkers. They're people unloading groceries. They are taking their children out because maybe they're visiting, so they're taking them out of the back seats. There's always going to be some kind of use in front of the building. And to Jake's point, if you narrow it down to one lane each way and not create a place where people can pull over and then do that kind of activity out of the lane of traffic, it becomes a Bergen Avenue situation that's at Journal Square. It's a nightmare in that people are double parked in the singular lane, whether it's by the post office or by Capital One Bank, and they expect you to go over the double yellow line in order to pass them by. So enforcement, as you well know, in this city is one of our biggest weaknesses. And because enforcement is not really high priority for these kinds of activities, unfortunately, they perpetuate themselves. And as a result, to Jake's point, it creates even more of a nightmare of traffic on Communipaw Avenue. And as you pointed out, even with the parking in the bus stop, the buses can't pull over. Not that they would anyway, even if it were clear. I don't even know why we have bus stops, because they never seem to pull in, because they're afraid they can never get back out again, because people are inconsiderate. How do you address all these kind of society behaviors? I don't know, but I know I've been reading about other cities who are diminishing their parking standards are really considering making bus stops that are defined areas, like the one on the corner of West Side and Communipaw, into multi-use spaces, so that this way, if it's a UPS truck, they can pull off on the side, because the buses come, certain bus stops do not get frequent bus traffic. And then other bus stops do have a variety of buses that stop there, like the one on the corner of Communipaw and West Side. But other bus stops on West Side may only have the West Side bus, and they're only coming once a half an hour. And yet a prime delivery guy will use it for 10 minutes while he's making his deliveries, or, all the food. People get delivered everything nowadays, from their food to their packages that they order on Amazon or wherever. So addressing the traffic on Communipaw and creating it to be a more walkable avenue, I wish you all the luck in the world, because I think that's going to be one of the hardest things to accomplish, because it's been so used as this corridor coming in, like an additional highway, kind of like the boulevard. The boulevard was at one time a very slow moving roadway. And if you wanted to move quickly through Jersey City, you would be on Route 1 and 9 and Route 440, the back highway, as we called it. But because the traffic has gotten so bad there, and so many jams, particularly at Communipaw and 440 and 1 and 9, that people avoid it. And they end up using, whether it's West Side or they end up using the boulevard as alternatives. And then it becomes a nightmare for all of us in the residential areas, because we're the through drive-through areas. But one of the other things I did want to bring up that came up on some of the things that I read, because I read about smart cities and development in other cities, and certainly have been following this trend for less and less parking to be included in multi-unit buildings, is that it really leaves out a fair segment of society. It leaves out a lot of people with disabilities, because you don't necessarily attribute or assign a handicap spot within the building to a person who has disabilities that may have an apartment in there. Especially with these minimal, now you've included parking, but at a very minimal level. So maybe there can be some amendment that if there are ADA apartments in there, they have to have its own individual assigned parking space in the parking lot, an ADA handicap spot. Because you're not going to be able to put it in front of the building, not on Communipaw Avenue. And then you leave out seniors who cannot do all this walkability because, maybe the bus stop is on Communipaw and West Side, so they'd have to take a long stroll to get there. But seniors like to have their cars available to them. And so you really minimize the amount of seniors that are going to be utilizing these apartments, I think, really, because they're also on limited incomes. They can't just pay for Uber now, as often as some of the people who are still working. So I really think, but as far as handicap disabilities, that there really should be some accommodation for people with disabilities or a handicap spot within the building if ADA apartments are being created. And by the way, are any of those that were approved, did any of them have affordable housing units as part of their development? Do you know?
No, they did not. Pretty sure, Francisco.
Yeah,
Is that
I'm
right?
not 100% certain just because I wasn't the planner assigned to it, but I don't, even just looking at the layout of the plans, I don't remember having it.
Okay, so none being affordable. So going forward, is there any affordability being built into this zoning?
Yeah, so because it would be a rezoning from commercial automotive to NC1 or 2, they would have to follow the inclusionary zoning ordinance. So in this area, it would be 10% of units to be affordable housing for buildings that have 15 units or more.
Really, only 10%?
In this part of the town, in this part of the city, yeah. Parts of downtown have 15%. I think that's mostly where the 15% is concentrated.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bayfront has 35 as its goal. I mean,
Yes.
which is much higher. And then lastly, the only thing I have a great concern about, and not that I'm a resident abutting up the back of these buildings, but I notice you're saying, okay, it's 15 feet from the back property line would be with this new zoning, or if there's parking on the ground floor, they can park right up against the property line. So I'm not certain how deep the lots are, the residential lots on the abutting blocks, but if they're particularly shallow, then shouldn't we be thinking about giving them a little bit more breathing space than having all of a sudden a 6-story building up against them, where before they had nothing? And particularly on the sunny side of if they're on the southern side of Communipaw Avenue, these bigger buildings will be putting them in the shadows.
Yeah, we'll investigate further. Something else we were considering doing, which was something that was done in the RC zones, was to switch from a linear foot to a percentage of the lot depth. So we were looking to consider a 15% lot depth rather than 15 feet. Most of the lots in this area that we are discussing, I think most of them were landing at the 100-foot depth. There were some that were deeper. So that would help for lots that are deeper than 100 feet. That would help increase the rear yard.
Yeah, and for the NC2, which would be the new zone, it's particularly larger. So for those lots that are 100, we're requiring a setback of 25%, which would give you 25 feet away from the property line.
Unless there's parking.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so but every story above the ground floor
Yeah,
would come back.
Right, but I mean, they'd still have car exhaust up against their back. I mean, I'm talking about people who are here already, who are
Mhm.
invested in our city
Yep.
and residents for however long they've been there.
I understand the concern. Yeah, we'll look into it. It's something that's like fairly common practice. For example, up on Palisade Avenue, the new zoning up there. Well, it's not so new anymore, but what was R2D, what's now RC2, properties are allowed to build their parking out to their rear property line, just only on the ground floor, and then similarly set back their upper stories. So we understand the concern, but it is something that we've been doing in other parts of the city as well.
Well, particularly on a corridor like Communipaw, which already has a lot of car exhaust. I mean, these are people that we don't need to add more to their misery. That's all. I mean, listen, as I said, I'm not one who lives there, but I'm arguing in their favor because I just think if all of a sudden my house had a 6-story behind it, I would be appalled at the fact that now I have to deal with somebody's car starting up in the morning, and sitting there warming up and blowing exhaust into my yard. That would be a problem to me.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see. We can take some other comments.
should I promote? So I see there's a Ward F office and then
Yeah,
Avion.
that would be great.
Should I promote both of them or should I promote one?
I guess start with Ward F and we'll take it from there.
Got you.
Thanks.
I will change role to attendee. Okay. It's taking a little longer than expected.
Yeah,
There
I'll
we
give another second. Hello, we can see you, but we can't hear you.
Hi, Erica Walker, Ward F8. I'm also a Jersey City resident. As you know, this area runs right into the middle of Ward F. So we heard about this meeting just today and invited our constituents to join as well, because it's adjacent to our ward. I'd like to echo the sentiments of Jake and Charlene regarding the drop-off and the concern for double parked vehicles or persons taking advantage of just the ability to stop. We suffer from this on the other side of Bergen, down Communipaw, specifically every time I pass Papa John's, somebody is parked in a no parking area, stop there to pick up Papa John's, and it causes traffic. So while in theory I support drop off areas, I think they would be abused. I agree with Charlene in saying that buses don't even pull over for their designated areas. They just stop and you have to wait. So unless buses are going to say, all right, we'll pull over in our designated areas. In theory, it sounds great, but in reality, the designated areas are not used for those purposes. What might work possibly if we're talking about new developments, having parking in the back, if there's an entrance and like how uh, fast food restaurants have, like you can only enter this direction and you can have to exit another direction. I think that causes not having that with all of the automobile shops along Communipaw, that causes a lot of traffic because there's only one way in, one way out for all of those auto places and persons. I I often, in traveling up and down Communipaw, and I touch Communipaw every day, several times a day, I always witness employees of these vehicle shops stopping traffic to let their people out. So if there is a designated one way in and then another way out, so that doesn't have to occur and nobody is backing out of traffic, I think the community would benefit from that. That's, and then I just wanted to just make a recommendation for future reference. I think things like Communipaw Avenue, whenever we're talking, whenever planning is discussing Communipaw, Bergen, the Boulevard, Ocean, West Side, these main corridors, I feel like these meetings should be open to the whole entire Jersey City, not just the ward that it lives in, because they affect all of Jersey City. No matter if you live, walk, bike ride, drive through, or patronize the businesses in this area, everyone in Jersey City is affected by what happens to Communipaw Avenue. So I just want to advocate for full citywide promotion of meetings like this, as opposed to just ward specific promotion.
Okay, understood.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna promote Kayvon. And if there are any other attendees out there who wanna,
Hi, how are you guys?
Hello.
Can you- Well, I wanted to first thank you all for having this meeting. I think it's so exciting to see Communipaw kind of become more lively and more friendly for families. You know, as a parent of 3, I jumped on a little bit late, so I don't want to waste anyone's time. I know there's a lot of questions. Was there talk about a raised overpass by any chance at the earlier part of the meeting?
No.
Okay, so I guess I'll start there. So I'm kind of a different perspective than everyone else. I don't drive. I haven't driven a car in like 16 years, and I moved here almost 6 years ago from the city. I know a lot of people don't like that narrative, but it's a reality. A lot of people do move here from New York City, and a lot of people don't drive when they move here. I think one of the reasons why a lot of people end up getting cars is because you don't have reliable transit. You don't have a lot of, you know, bike lanes, and a lot of things that you guys are speaking about, I think will encourage more people to stay pedestrian, like my family. But I think the biggest issue that I have with that intersection, I live 2 blocks from there, is that's the entrance to Lincoln Park for the south of Communipaw, that intersection of Mallory and Communipaw. And I'm not joking, like probably like every other month, me and my family almost get hit by a car at that intersection. And it's usually the turning lane.
Are you
those
talking
left
about
turn-
at Mallory?
Yeah,
Just to make
Mallory.
sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mallory and Communipaw. I saw that there was talk of putting a crosswalk over towards Mercy, if I'm not mistaken from the diagram. I was trying to watch on my phone and I'm trying to feed my kids. But I just want to say that is not, in my opinion, the best spot, only because most residential areas are coming further inland. That's towards the highway. There's not a lot of families who are like coming from there yet. I know eventually that space might get developed, but most of your families, most of your houses, most of your people are coming closer to Mallory, between Mallory and West Side, where, you know, most of the housing is. And I really think it would be food for thought if it was possible and feasible to have a raised overpass, a walking overpass. That intersection, that part of Communipaw is coming right off of the major highway. People are in highway mode. Trucks are coming down. They're not ready to play, oh, look at this cute little family crossing the street. Like, we're ready to go. That's the mentality I get being a pedestrian. And you know, a lot of times people don't intentionally, you know, like just pass. They don't see you. And, you know, a lot of the responses is like, whoa, there's someone on the street. Or there's a lot of rage, like, hey, like, this is an extension of a highway. Like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't even be walking. But there's actually, you know, there's that lane, that walkway with the light, but you're a blind spot for a lot of people returning there. And I just think with the new development coming, more residential, there's going to be more families, more people who are like myself, who are transplants, who are not going to initially want to drive. But I think what happens is people drive out of necessity. They don't feel safe. I know that on West Side, there's more reliable buses. That a different conversation. That bus on Communipaw never shows up, but that's a different story for another day. But I'm just saying, food for thought. If it's an option, if it's something, I think it would really provide a lot of safety and confidence for people. And also keep in mind, I am the PTO president for the Learning Community Charter School. And that entrance, you have two schools on the other side of the park that people are crossing in the mornings to get their kids to school. You have St. Al's, which is the private school, and you have Learning Community Charter School on the boulevard. So people are walking through the park to take their kids to school. And I think there needs to be a safer way to walk to get your families to the park and to school.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you guys for your time, and I'll go ahead and cut myself off.
Thanks.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, I see one more hand that's raised. Oh, and there's another one too. Promoting John. Oh, that's weird. I didn't promote him. Okay, Zoom is acting. Oh, so they're declining. Okay, so I'll move on to the next hand.
Sounds good.
Hi, I'm Talia.
Hello.
I was at your previous meeting, but I missed the first half of this one, so I'm not sure what the results were shared, but I did want to just make sure to shout out any pedestrian upgrades that are being planned or being included as part of this process. I live on West Side and Duncan area, and Communipaw is we're kind of like boxed in because the park is really wonderful in terms of walking, but everywhere else is a nightmare. And so I'm just hopeful that the rezoning can make life better from pedestrians, making hopefully slowing cars down. I know that's not part of this plan, but slowing cars down, making intersections safer, widening the sidewalk and maybe narrowing the road if we don't need it. And then I don't know, probably already people mentioned, but access to better bike lanes. My kids and I are trapped. There's a lot of places we can get to if we could get on our bikes. The rail would be one example of that, but we just can't get there safely where the sidewalks are crowded with people. It's not a good option. And West Side Ave is terrifying on a bike because of how narrow it is and how impatient drivers are. So, and we tried once to ride our bikes to Liberty State Park, but that's like really, really difficult. And same to Cave and Point where all the soccer is. There's Communipaw is a big connecting road. And I know that's why cars need it, but there's other people that need it too. So if there's improvements that can help us, that would be great. Sorry
Yeah.
for the yelling in the background. There's
Oh,
dinner.
no, all good. And thank you. We'll just make sure to send out the draft and some of the slides. So if you didn't have a chance to take a look at some of that stuff, there's some of those things incorporated into the proposal for the zoning.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's try John again, Francisco.
Yeah, one more time. Oh, okay. They're joining.
Great.
Unmute.
Oh.
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Just a quick few things. Hello, Charlene. How are you? We're friends. And I had a question about my thought about the set aside or the cutout for delivery and all like that. I'm sure that will fill up with people parking
Yeah.
anyway and take places like they do in the bus stops. The other thing I was concerned about was utilities. With the main rush for electronic vehicles, I can see all these charging wires coming out of the apartment windows down to cars in the street. And plus the underground utilities, there are poles outside And I know some places you cannot have a pole with electricity anymore. I live in an historic district, so we have poles in the back. They don't even like that. They want them in the front so they can fix them. But if you have underground utilities, that's opening up for more electricity. And one other thing has nothing to do with the zoning, but I was a state director for the Lincoln Highway Association, and the Lincoln Highway in 1913 ran along the boulevard through Lincoln Park out onto 1 and 9, which was that bridge, the Lincoln Highway Bridge, until the poor officers were killed and they renamed it. But that Lincoln Highway was readjusted when the entrance to the park down by 440 was closed. So it comes in from 1 and 9 and it crosses 440 up to the boulevard where it makes a left turn. If you go along the boulevard, you'll see a Lincoln Highway sign at Montgomery Street and the boulevard. And there are some like Journal Square and all. So I hate to see that you have to do anything for it, but it's nice to know that there is such a thing as a Lincoln Highway there. Because most of the time you mention it to people, they say, what are you talking about? You know, but it is part of the Lincoln Highway. And every once in a while there's a tour, which shouldn't be a problem because it'll be happy people going on the ride. So thank you very much for your work, and I'll be standing by, listening and all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Over now.
Thanks. I'll just pull up the draft language quickly, because there is some provision for electric vehicles. So here's the draft language. So we are looking to require a minimum of 10% of parking spaces to be dedicated charging locations for electric vehicles. So that's something we've considered, and that would be incorporated within the parking structure of a building. Maybe there's some more language we could add to kind of clarify that as well. But we are looking at a minimum of 10% to have chargers.
I did see Susanna crossing. Her. Oh, they declined. I'm gonna try one more time.
Great.
Okay, there we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Hello, thank you so much. Thanks so much for all the work you've done on this idea and all the logistics, obviously, that go into planning such a thing. I'm a part of the Lincoln Park North neighborhood, so I'm just adjacent to kind of these proposed changes. And my neighborhood talks a lot about some of the themes you're hearing tonight in the meeting. And I think there's kind of two things I want to touch on and just sort of emphasize in support of my neighbors, and also just to underscore them for your consideration for whatever that's worth. The first, obviously, I think is, the inloading and offloading, the parking situation, the high traffic congestion, so on and so forth. I think that people's lived experience in these lived communities that have been starved out of infrastructure, amenities, and services for generations is that there is a lack of enforcement. So even if there is a bus stop, the bus drivers don't use it. Even if that is a no parking zone, people still park there. And the city seems to not really blink about it. And so as we give this signal of, bigger is better, and let's build a Marriott right here on Communipaw, there's this deep suspicion, this deep concern, I think, throughout the community that's very, very well come upon, that we have a collective memory of being neglected in terms of being a priority for city enforcement to ensure that our quality of life is also protected as bigger and better becomes the new norm, right? We don't have confidence because that trust has not been cultivated with this particular community between us and the city. There has been a pattern and practice of benign neglect for a really long time. And I think a lot of the complaints that are coming up have to do with a lack of enforcement, a lack of attention, and a lack of perceived concern for this community. And so as we signal to newcomers that they're welcome to come in, and big time developers that they're welcome to come make profits off of our community, there doesn't seem to be a concurrent commitment from the city to ensure that the people who invested in this place before it was a cool thing to do are protected in their quality of life, so that Kayvon and his family can enjoy these new businesses and can cross the street safely and can perhaps enjoy an overpass, right? So we have a history of benign neglect that has eroded the trust that, more is better doesn't resonate with us unless we were to see similar commitments from other city agencies. So I just want to draw your attention to, sort of that theme. I think another thing I wanted to raise is the neighborhood commercial zoning in general. I'm in a neighborhood commercial zone already on West Side, and we have a meeting tomorrow with lots of other communities that have this specialized zoning, because there are very serious questions now that the city's undertaking to expand this zone, take it for granted that it's a wonderful walkable neighborhood thing. Our experience is that it's a lot of beauty shops and bodegas. And the intent of the zoning is to draw in essential amenities and services for the people who live here within walkable, bikeable distance, right? In order to serve the communities where those bonuses are located. You get 5 residential floors, you get to make $1 bazillion. We get a grocery store. That's the idea, right? They get to put more height, more bulk, where it doesn't belong in order to provide us with something. It's a give and take, but we don't get a lot on the take. And so I wonder if the city is thinking critically and carefully about how the neighborhood commercial zoning, as it's currently constructed, as the phrasing is actually serving the communities where those zones are located. They're few and far between. They're a bit of an odd creature in Jersey City zoning. I've done the math, I've looked at it because I'm in one, so I wanted to understand it. And I get, the developer gets all these units and all of this density and all this height without asking for permission in exchange for us getting a community business. But when that zoning in effect creates 15 nail salons in a row and 14 eyelash shops and a couple of hair studios, but no groceries, there's literally no groceries. Like, that's why the Amazon truck is in the loading zone. That's why people are having their groceries delivered because there are no groceries. There is no dry cleaning. There are no places in the neighborhood commercial zones to acquire essential goods and services to just live in your neighborhood. And so I would just encourage you to look more generally at how the NC zoning is actually working in those communities before you take for granted that that's a wonderful solution for this corridor. I would love to see a wonderful walkable community retail space in this area. I question whether this zoning accomplishes that, and I would ask the city to look very carefully at that before drawing it further.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we got all the hands that were up, and then in terms of the chat, there were just some other notes for us. Someone did ask any predictions as to what will be the impact on vehicular traffic with new units and corresponding cars, and meeting that with the narrowing meeting that with reduction of lanes or accommodating bike lanes. So I guess really the thing that I just want to point out here is that there would be further studies done in the future. I can't, that's not my wheelhouse in terms of predicting or forecasting, but if there were to be changes like a road diet or incorporating protected bike road diet, which would incorporate protected bike lanes, there would be traffic studies done.
Oh, I do see.
Yeah, that was Sergio's question. So
I'll
maybe
promote.
they just wants to respond to that.
Yeah. Okay, it worked.
Hi, thanks for your question. I'll just ask to unmute. Hi, Sergio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for answering the question, but this is the problem. You see, everything that has been said here is extremely useful. The gentleman who mentioned that the Communipaw buses don't never come, but that was another subject. Actually, it is a subject for right now. And I've been saying this all along with the other city planners, that there's this burst in construction that personally, I've never even seen like this in my life. I find this extremely strange. So, as it has been said here before, Communipaw is an artery that leads out of the state of New Jersey, really. I mean, you go west on that, and people come east through this. And I drive down that patch from west side all the way to 440. I mean, I've been doing this for 22 years. And it's now you're telling me that there's 200 and some units, right, and more to come, because the zoning board is a formality. We know that they approve everything. And then, well, it is true. I'm telling you, you give variances, and that's it. This is what I haven't seen one building being stopped by this or that. It's the majority is authorized, and heights, double heights, and everything. I'm not in this area, but next to the Beacon Hospital, for example, that building is being built twice as high as it was originally zoned for. But my idea is this: how are you going to transport people? People have to drive in Jersey City. We were not in Brooklyn, there's no subway. The buses are, as the gentleman said. So yeah, everything makes sense from your perspective. But from those who have been here for 20 years and have faced exactly what everybody says, lack of enforcement, bad transportation, et cetera, saying, I think the question is, are you taking into consideration all this? I mean, where are all these 200 people in these 3 units going to park their cars, whatever? Are you going to get stuck on Communipaw now? Because if these people, let's say, for example, 20% of them have cars, okay, that's already a lot of cars circulating. I mean, I just want to know what because you just said, well, there's a future studies. Well, this is exactly what I mean. Personally, I want the studies now. Because 5 years from now, this mayor is going to be who knows where, and then nobody's going to sign a promissory note to me saying that it didn't happen. Okay, that's a past term. I don't care anymore. I personally think this is very, very strange. But anyway, a future study. Maybe you can bring to the attention of the city planner and the zoning board that future studies don't make any sense. I want to know what's going to happen with these 200 units and their cars and friends and dogs and everything. And people are, as the gentleman said, being almost run over by cars on Communipaw because there's no enforcement. I mean, this is a reality. So, when you consider all this, are you taking into consideration the reality of Jersey City? I just want to know what future plans are this and when am I going to see them?
Okay, thank you. So I will just say the bit of that comment that I was responding to was about you had specifically asked about the road diet, so that's why I was explaining that would come in a future study. But at any rate, I think we're at a point where we could wrap up for tonight. I'd like to thank everybody for coming on. I did see Councilwoman Pranzeri on. If you'd like to say anything, you could raise your hand. I know I didn't get you earlier on in the meeting. Thanks.
Oh, there we go.
Hello.
I'll just be very brief. Also, my connection here is a little. Hi, hello. Good evening, everyone. Hoping you can hear me. My connection is a little spotty, but I just want to thank you for presenting the latest iteration of plans to the residents here and for everyone on this call who has participated and shared your points of view. I think that's great. I look forward to our planning department taking this feedback and sharing the next iteration. So please do keep your questions and comments coming. And we look forward. And also one other point, I came on the call a little late. I know that there was a question about 2 of the projects on Lower Communipaw. I think it's like 160 something and 170 something. Both of those projects have 10% affordable housing. Just as a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you.
But you're welcome. But also good points too, though, about the issues with loading and unloading. I think that's also going to be something that's going to have to be studied pretty closely because we all know that double parking is an issue, and again, so is enforcement. So I will say that and we are working on that as well. So have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for joining. So we'll reach out. We'll send out this information from tonight, the slides, the meeting recording, the draft language, and we'll be in touch, and we hope to hear from you. Thank you and have a nice night.